it looks like it's working. So, okay, let me start. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here. My name is Kinga. I'm a media expert and the founder and CEO of Mediaspace Global, which is operated by White Report Global Limited, our UK company. I have with me Phil McCauley. He's our non-executive director on the board of White Report Global Limited, and Lavina Sudendiran. She's our head of content and communications and an instructor and speaker today. Please also meet Craig. He is from Kuala Lumpur. I didn't mention you that Phil is from London originally, but he's in South France now, and Lavina is in London while I am in Budapest. Please meet Craig from Kuala Lumpur. He is a co-founder of Orkan Consulting and also the co-founder of the Third Degree platform. And they are all pro digital networkers. So that's why we invited them today. About Mediaspace, as you know, we started to develop the platform in January 2020 before COVID, and we launched it in May 2020 to connect professionals in media, marketing, technology, and regulation all around the world and make it a more interactive, more personal platform than what LinkedIn and other social platforms are. So you can meet people, not just social media profiles here, and that's why we are here today. So basically this session will have two parts. One is the fireside chat with our special guests. That's going to be about networking and increasing visibility in the hybrid era. And the second part will be, which is not live streamed, the networking session for all the attendees here, when you will be able to introduce yourself and we can start conversations on the topic that we are discussing now. And before we start, just a couple of house rules. Please have your full name and your company on the screen so we can identify you and you can find each other later easily. If you haven't signed up for Mediaspace Global, please do so because this is a member event. And if you want to share your email address and Mediaspace and or LinkedIn account, please share it in the chat. The discussion will be not in the chat, but live. So as you can see, we are recording this event and also live streaming. So I hope that it's going to be okay. If not, I have to ask you to leave now because these are obviously public stuff. And as I mentioned, the networking part will not be live streamed, but it will be recorded as well. And that's only for internal purposes. So basically that's all about the technical information. And now let's dive into the discussion. So let me just put it on a speaker mode. And I would like to ask our special guests to give a very short introduction about themselves. And it's like 1 or 2 minutes, and to tell us how you become a networking and digital networking pro. So let's start with Craig.
Hi, well, good evening from Kuala Lumpur. I'm actually a Kiwi, but I've been living in Southeast Asia for close to the last 20 years. Together with Farrell, who's in the group and hiding his face, we own 2 businesses, one being Orkan Consulting Asia, which is a branding and PR agency. And during the very early phases of the pandemic, we started a platform called the Third Degree for supporting postgraduate research students globally. For me, I'm going to be honest and say I was never much one for networking. In fact, I try and shy away from it as much as possible. But LinkedIn, the pandemic, Zoom, Mediaspace really got me into seeing the benefits of connecting globally. And it's been a great opportunity because it really does work very well for businesses, especially when an international dimension to what you're doing certainly adds value. So I've got to say thank you to probably the last 4 or 5 years, really, that has got me to appreciate the value of networking electronically as opposed to going to events and hiding in the corner. I'll hand over to the next person.
Thank you. Lavina, would you please introduce yourself? We can't hear you.
Sorry, the classic mute. Hi everyone, I'm Lavina, and as Kinga mentioned, I work as head of content and comms at Mediaspace. Well, pre-pandemic, most of my networking was done in the physical world here in London, where I grew up, and I worked here for most of my time in the media industry. And this was just the norm. Connecting with people on a human personal level was just something that came more naturally to me, and the physical world lent itself really well to that. But when we moved over to the digital world, it was very much outside of my comfort zone. I was not used to Zoom. I was not used to digital networking. So Mediaspace came along. Well, Kinga asked me to come on board with Mediaspace, and that really opened up a lot of opportunities for me, because I started hosting the Mediaspace members daily interviews, and through that I've done about 200 interviews, met people across the globe, and that just goes to show that you can connect with people across the globe and raise your professional visibility, as well as just creating more opportunities for yourself.
Thank you. As far as I know, Phil has always been a networker, but please introduce yourself by yourself.
Hi, everyone. Well, first of all, send me all your contact details. So that's the first rule of networking, isn't it? You know, make sure you keep in touch with everybody. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor in music and technology. And as a man of interest, and speaking to the power of digital networking, I started a business 2 years ago, which is about to raise over $10 million in the United States in seed funding. And most of the directors of that company have not met each other physically. And yet we've built amazing relationships. So I think the truth is that it makes very little difference, except for the fact that clearly you can go for something to eat if you actually meet people in person, and that's what I'd highly recommend. The thing I think I can add to this in a very short, sharp effort is to say, when you have a network, ask for help. People are all kind and lovely and fabulous, in my experience. And I only deal with those people anyway, as I'm sure we're all the same. So ask for help. Somebody's around and you need some help. I think people love to be asked for their help, and I love to give it. So I think that's my number one tip, and I look forward to our chat today.
Thank you, Phil. So let's dive into this topic a little bit more, because I would be very much interested in how you see this very new situation. Obviously, we had the, let's call it a physical world, then we had the COVID times when that was mostly digital in terms of professional communications and business development and career management and so on. So what do you think if someone wants to grow their network and visibility for any reason, professional or business reason, or they just want to increase their I don't know position in their current state of the world, which is a hybrid world, and it's very, very different for people who work from home, different for those who have to go to the company they work for. So what's your view on this hybrid world? What are the main challenges that everyone has to face?
Who's that for? Is that for Craig? Craig?
Yeah, please, Craig.
Sure. I think, you know, let's sort of give a context of education first. there's always a lot that say professors and academics are difficult to deal with. They don't respond to emails and so forth. But what I've found is that through what's happened in the last couple of years for us, people have become a lot more open, because as you cut off certain ways to connect, the only way to be able to connect is, through using online, and that's become a normal for many of us. The challenge is always going to be getting that connection. I think we're all still guilty of perhaps looking at our LinkedIn or our Facebook, and we see a request and we're like, well, who are they? And we do have to, make a judgment as to say, look, am I going to get some form of value out of the connection that I get from this new individual? But I think part of that challenge is, as we try to broaden our networks, as we try to connect with new individuals, we've also got to know what we can offer them. And one of the things that I always say about this is, it's not about having something that you can offer immediately, but it's knowing that there is an opportunity to contribute, to offer something into the long term. And the challenge for us then is, look, it's great to be able to connect with you. It's great to be able to talk with you. I know that immediately I've got no opportunity. Immediately there's nothing that's going to really get us going. But I know that in about a year's time, I'm really going to want to remember your name. And I think it's important to have that longer term viewpoint of what we're doing with any form of online networking, at least.
So you're suggesting to be patient in a way, not just doing things at once, but building relationships, and then
building relationships is extremely important. I'm not going to connect with Phil, and the first thing is, hey, Phil, thanks for the connection. I've got this product that I'd like you to take a look at. You do have to have that subtlety about it. You do have to develop that rapport. But you've also just got to recognize that that is a long-term process.
Mm-hmm. Lavina, what do you think about the changes in terms of trust? And obviously the original question remains for you too.
I think one of the challenges is actually connecting with people on a deeper level when we're doing things in the virtual space. So, for example, I met you in Budapest in person, and then we built a connection, and then that turned into working together virtually, so that it was based on a physical meeting. And I think what people may struggle with, I know I do, is building a deeper connection with people through the virtual space. So mixing hybrid and the face-to-face setup, I mean the hybrid setup I think they've got to go together to be able to create that deeper connection, so that you can be well connected and stay connected. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And another question, do you think it's possible in the long term to maintain partnerships and relations that were born in the digital space? Because we've got a couple of them, and I wonder how they work out.
Yeah, no, I think there is proof from Mediaspace that is possible. I mean, we've met some great people like Craig and Burrell through Mediaspace. We're quite well connected, even though we haven't met in person. So I think it's just building that trust and offering something as well, showing that you've got something to offer, and just staying well connected, understanding what their needs are, as well as them understanding what our needs are. So having that mutual relationship where you can offer something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Phil, you mentioned you have a pretty hybrid team. So what do you think the main challenges are?
Well, I mean, I think, first of all, those points are really great points that Craig and Lavina have made. I think if I speak from my own personal point of view as an example, we have people in our team, there are 10 people in this team after about 18 months since it started in earnest. And half of them are in the United States of America. And in America, half of them are on the West Coast and half of them are on the East Coast. So the first challenge is, when do you meet? And that actually turns into a format now. So one of the things I've learned about the hybrid situation is to be very organized around when you're going to meet. So I think in an office environment, it's much more informal, isn't it? Oh, can we see each other on Thursday? What time can you do? Whereas I think when you're doing hybrid working, you really need to be planned. So what we do in our business is we have 2 meeting events every week where everybody meets for the sort of stand up and catch up. And then beyond that, of course, there are individual one-to-one sessions or correspondence that work. So for me, I think hybrid offers an opportunity, but I think it needs to be highly organized, but probably for that reason on an international basis. And the other thing that I've learned is it's the first time I've tried to do anything on a global basis as a startup, which is a sort of software platform in IP. And the challenges there come around to understanding not just what you're doing in your own marketplace or your own country, but what needs to happen where. You know, here I am living in part-time in London, part-time in the south of France, and our business is in the United States. I think that could never have happened without the advent of coronavirus and the push of Zoom and the way everything changed overnight. So on the upside, one of the things it offers up is an extraordinary opportunity. Who knows who of us here might be in business together at some point because of today? That could happen. And that would change everything. And that's, I think, the power of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one sentence about our upcoming course that Lavina will speak about later on, the Well-Connected Leader course, that we have gathered these techniques and skills that we believe can bring professionals to this point, what Phil just mentioned, that building relationships and trust might lead to new business and career opportunities. And I know Craig has mentioned one in his video, and we have a couple of other members who already started to work together, and we are very, very proud of that, because that's one of the reasons why we are here. So if you have any feedback or comment how we could do it better, please let us know, or what you would like to learn about, because we will be doing it in a minute, and you will see the format that we believe is pretty good, but we are always ready to improve. So going back to this thing, I think in a business relation or working relation, trust is very important. So I'd like to ask Craig about this, because you mentioned this in and its change in your video.
Sure. So I think when we look at, utilizing online networking, trust is difficult to establish. We don't have that chance to sit down. We don't go out to tea. We don't go out to lunch and get to know people personally. But what you do need to still focus on is, as you're developing networks and as you're trying to bring new people into your circle, you still need to make time virtually for those aspects. So a lot of our meetings, especially for Farrell and I, we talk with the client, or we might talk with an academic that we've just met. The first quarter of the meeting easily will be that same process of, getting to know people, asking how they're doing, all the things that we would do face to face in an electronic setting. But we've recognized that just because the channel has changed, the format and the approach doesn't have to change as well. I think what's great about platforms like Zoom as a communication tool is being able to see people face to face helps to develop that trust. You get to see people in their authentic situation and in their authentic settings. If I look at the screens and everybody who's turned on their cameras, you've got some great living rooms and offices and all of that. And I think that's actually helped in the interpersonal dimension, because you're now getting this sort of glimpse into somebody's home or somebody's personal space that you're not going to get when you meet at a cafe. So when one thing disappears, something else comes along. What you've still got to do, I think, as with any form of networking and wanting to find ways to collaborate with somebody is it still comes down to gut instinct. You know, how do you personally feel? What's your instinct about the individual rather than anything else? If you like the person, if you like how they sound, what they're saying, then explore. If you feel that there's red flags, as we're sitting at a cafe or a restaurant, if there's red flags, you know what to do there as well.
Right, thank you. We are running out of time for the fireside chat, so I would like to ask the last questions. Starting with Lavina, what would be your single piece of advice in terms of digital networking for the attendees today?
I would say think beyond what's comfortable to you and what's known to you and put yourself out there in the professional space, even if it's something that you feel like, oh, I don't want to do that, because I felt like that. And I think the more you do it, the more confident you become and it becomes the norm. So, for example, you can get in touch with me and be interviewed for our Mediaspace Members Daily series. It's a great way to, if you're a thought leader or an expert, it's a great way to share your expertise within your space and raise your profile. And you can share that on LinkedIn and other social networks to really put yourself out there. In the same way, you can get involved in speaking engagements and just really be present. And I know a lot of leaders don't have time to post on professional social networks like LinkedIn, but if you can, make some time. If not, we're there to help. So just get in touch with us and see how we can help you with that.
Great advice. Thank you, Lavina. What's your advice, Phil?
Well, I mentioned asking for help before. I think understanding what would help you most next is good around networking. I find it to be true that there are very few places in the world, companies, businesses, parliaments, anywhere, that we couldn't get a meeting with somebody that we wanted to simply by asking around in our own network. I don't think it's 6 degrees of separation or 5 or 4 or 3 or 2. I think it's 1. I think, you know, Craig knows tons of people. I know tons of people. I'm sure if I need somebody that's in his sphere, I can ask him, hey, have you got anybody who'd be great on blockchain in the United States who understands, you know, foreign currency trading? And he might say, yes, there's this guy who blah, 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 and he can introduce me. And this is a connection that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't spoken up. So I think speaking up, to Lavina's point, is really important. Say what you want. If people can't help, they'll say so. And they don't mind being asked. I don't. I spend a lot of time helping people get to where they want to be. And what I find more than anything else, it's a little bit like donating to a charity, isn't it? When you help people, it's not just about the charity that you're helping. It's about feeling good that you did it. And I think that's true for networking. People want to feel good that they helped you. They don't want anything for it. They just want the feeling that they've helped and that they're a human and that they're connected to you. And so that's my advice.
Thank you, Phil. And Craig, what's your one single piece of advice?
So I'm going to correlate with what Phil said there, but slightly different terminology. From an algorithm perspective, as I'm connected to Phil, I'm connected to Phil's networks, its exposure. And the greater our individual networks are, the greater our collective networks are for exactly those reasons.
Thank you so much. And we are absolutely on time to start the introductions and the member-to-member conversation. So I would stop the live streaming and ask Lavina to tell you how the introductions work. So please, Lavina, the virtual floor is yours.
Okay. So I'd like to ask you all to introduce yourself within just 30 seconds. If you can give your name, your locality, organization, and position in one sentence about what brought you here today. I will just ask David.
Okay,
just a minute. It's still.
Oh, is it still
on? Just a minute. I am looking.